Gather around for a tale passed down through uncounted generations. Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're continuing our look at the history of the Legend of Zelda series.
Lead our champions, Princess, and together protect our kingdom from the threat of Calamity Ganon.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Wind Waker left fans wanting a more adult Hyrule adventure disappointed, and sales were far behind the franchise record high of Ocarina of Time. It's since gained more appreciation, but backlash from fans at the time caused Nintendo to rethink some things when it came time for the next console release. But first, they needed to build up a different part of their Zelda timeline. In 2004, Nintendo released two new titles, the Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance and Four Swords Adventures for the GameCube. The former, like the Oracle games also developed by Capcom, took place at the beginning of the complicated Zelda timeline, and therefore gave players more history on Hyrule. Centered around Link's new ability to shrink down and explore new areas, the title was one of the best-selling and best-reviewed games for the GBA. Four Swords Adventures didn't fare quite as well. While still a success critically and commercially, it suffered from the requirement to own a Game Boy Advance along with a GameCube to GBA link cable just so you could play the multiplayer. What came next, however, was seen as a titan of the series. Twilight Princess was released in 2006 as a swan song to the GameCube and a launch title for the Wii. Those unhappy with the cartoony look of Wind Waker were more than pleased with this title's more realistic art style. Twilight Princess introduced new gameplay mechanics, such as horseback combat, and more importantly, the ability to turn into a wolf. It also introduced us to an entirely new race of beings known as the Twilight, and gave us one of Link's best sidekicks in Midna. The success of the Wii helped Twilight Princess become the best-selling game in the entire series. It'd stay that way for some time, but we'll get into that later. In 2007, Nintendo released Phantom Hourglass for their newest handheld console, the Nintendo DS. This game served as a direct follow-up to Wind Waker, following Link on an adventure after Tetra is kidnapped by the mysterious ghost ship. Link made new friends and had a new batch of islands to explore, but the most notable aspect was the gameplay. Phantom Hourglass expertly utilized the DS's dual screens and used the system's stylus for the majority of Link's controls. It was a more casual experience, but one that worked well enough to garner several Handheld Game of the Year awards and make room for a sequel. That sequel would be released 2 years later in the form of Spirit Tracks. But the story would take place much further in the future. It focused on the descendants of Link and Zelda from Phantom Hourglass as they tried to save their new Hyrule from the dastardly Chancellor Cole. It used similar gameplay mechanics to its predecessor, but included a much more unique traversal system for its overworld. In this game, players operated a train as it took Link from area to area. While the DS games weren't received as well as the console titles, they still offered fun and engrossing experiences that tested out new gameplay ideas. For the next console entry, Nintendo decided to go back to the very beginning. Released in 2011, Skyward Sword took place right at the start of the timeline. Being a Wii exclusive, Skyward Sword took full advantage of the system's motion controls, with some copies of the game coming packaged with a Wii Remote Plus, which would be needed to recognize more complex gestures. Players needed to approach each enemy intelligently, as they could block your attacks if you swung the controller the wrong way. While most stories focused on a formal relationship between Link and Zelda, this one had them as childhood friends moving towards something more. It made players care about Zelda more than ever before. Its motion controls may have put some players off, and the standard Zelda formula may have begun to wear a bit thin. But Skyward Sword was still praised for its art style, Link and Zelda's relationship, and the score, which was performed by an actual orchestra, a first in the franchise's history. We wouldn't receive another console game for quite some time. Instead, we were given the first game for Nintendo's newest addition to the DS family, the 3DS. A Link Between Worlds was released in 2013 and was a welcome return to the Zelda days of old. It was able to capture praise from both old and new fans by recreating the overworld from A Link to the Past, but also completely doing away with the series' traditional format. Players could now rent out items that were needed to reach new areas instead of being blocked off until they found where the item was hidden, making for a less linear game. Also, Link now had the ability to turn flat, helping him reach new areas and get around obstacles. A Link Between Worlds was received incredibly well, but it wasn't the only 3DS game we got. In 2015, Nintendo released Triforce Heroes, another take on multiplayer in the Zelda universe. You could team up with two other Links, whether they be your friends or decoys, to complete puzzles and fight enemies. While the gameplay was fun, it wasn't exactly what fans were looking for. And as it turns out, it wasn't what critics were looking for either, as it's currently the lowest ranked Zelda game on Metacritic with a Metascore of 73. What everyone was looking for had been shown off the previous year during Nintendo's E3 presentation, though we were only given a glimpse of what would become The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It was more than enough to get fans ecstatic, and that level of excitement would only grow every time Nintendo unveiled more about it. When it was finally released in 2017 alongside Nintendo's latest console, the Nintendo Switch, it was quickly viewed in the eyes of many players as the best in the series. Nintendo's first real take on an open-world game featured lushly colored environments, an endless amount of secrets around every corner, and a sense of exploration unmatched by most games. With Breath of the Wild, Nintendo reinvented one of their most popular series just like they'd done with Ocarina of Time. It quickly replaced Twilight Princess as the best-selling game in the series. Its giant world offered vastly unique playing experiences from player to player. And while many Zelda games received praise and awards, there was something different about this one. It set a new standard for the series and helped the Switch become one of the company's fastest-selling consoles. No matter what the future holds for the series, if it's anything like this, fans will be more than happy.
I tell you, those formal shindigs really take it out of me.
The gaming landscape simply wouldn't be the same without The Legend of Zelda. It is the pinnacle of the action-adventure genre, and one of the most respected series in all of gaming. Ever since the first game's release, Nintendo has captured our childlike sense of wonder by giving us new worlds to explore and new magic to perform. It's safe to say that as long as there are video games, The Legend of Zelda will be there to take us on a brilliant adventure. Thanks for watching MojoPlays. Be sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and check out our suggestion page in the description below.